I think we have entered a new crisis era in gaming. And that's awesome. Let's talk about it. So it was a nice Sunday morning. So me, my wife, my kid, and my two dogs went on a nice little walk around some lakes nearby. It gave me some time to think and reflect on Monday's video, or today's video, depending on when you're watching this. Now, when I say the crisis era, what do I mean by that? Well, back in 2007, this little game called Crysis came out, and it was a benchmark for graphical technology. The phrase, "can it run Crysis?" Echoed throughout the past decade and beyond, even to the point where now they remastered Crysis, and there is a "can it run Crysis" mode that cripples even the most powerful PCs of today. So I want to touch on 3 points to this video. One, the next-gen consoles and how their graphical prowess is honestly better than computers that most people have, and when you're looking at price to performance, it's better to go with a next-gen console in most cases. That could lead to some falling prices in the computer space. Two is literally Crysis Remastered just came out, and on PC at least there's a new "can it run Crysis" mode that pushes even the new 3080 and 3090 to their limits. And thirdly, we've seen debatably one of the first true next-gen games, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and it is creating the reputation for itself of being the next Crysis as far as how much horsepower it requires to run smoothly. But most of that is software limitations, and we'll talk about that. Make sure to use code INDUCTION for 0% off your purchase at G Fuel, because I'm not sponsored yet. G Fuel, please sponsor me. The Xbox Series X, Series S, and the PlayStation 5 are using AMD's RDNA 2 architecture. There's some rumors that PlayStation isn't a full RDNA 2, but let's just say they're both using next generation graphics architecture and also, let's say, current gen processor architecture, the Zen 2 AMD processors. So the majority of gamers on PC are running older hardware now, so consoles for once are actually going to be on par or ahead of the game. And if you're looking to upgrade and really get into gaming, you can do it. There's a lot of options, but right now, if you want something simple, something that's going to work and don't want to have to mess with optimizing settings and dealing with the Windows operating system, even though the Xbox is kind of, the next gen consoles seem like the way to go. And I think that for once, we're not going to be as limited by the current generation of consoles when it comes to game development, because they have such a high standard right now. With the velocity architecture of the Xbox and PlayStation's similar offering, we now have an insanely high storage throughput that can be used for interesting things like super fast world loading and open world games, the quick resume feature that allows you to switch between 3 to 5 games in seconds. It's pretty cool. So the downside, a lot of people will say, to every new console generation is that games are developed for the lowest common denominator, meaning they make them run well on the slowest console, and then they add some new features, higher resolutions, a texture pack here and there for PC and the higher end consoles. Well, now that the next gen consoles are so on par with current and debatably next generation computers, personally, I feel like that's not going to happen as much, especially because developers can utilize the super fast storage that even most computers don't have. However, the Xbox Series S is designed to target a lot of these next-gen games at 1440p instead of 4K, so is that going to limit developers to not take the extra mile to make games look amazing on super high-end systems? Is it just going to be, it looks the best on the Xbox Series S, and then everything else just has tiny little tweaks here and there because, again, the Series S is the lowest common denominator? We'll see. There will always be those companies like DICE who create games that will look insanely amazing if you throw thousands of dollars of hardware at it, like the Battlefield series and ray tracing, all that crazy stuff. Plus, if the past few years have taught us anything, from Minecraft to Fall Guys to Among Us, is graphics aren't everything. It's never been easier to develop video games with Unity and Unreal Engine being, free and accessible for people to create their vision, and it doesn't have to look like Battlefield or Crysis or Horizon Zero Dawn to be a good game. So keep that in mind. Graphics aren't everything. So let's move on to point 2, Crysis Remastered. Well, it was remastered for the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, PC, and Nintendo Switch. And even though it's developed on a much newer version of CryEngine, we still see some limitations that the original game had, mainly that it's a very single-threaded game engine, and that the AI still runs on an older type of scripting that, even on new hardware, kind of limits it to only a few processing cores or threads. And I don't know, it's weird that even after with all of these innovations, it still kind of struggles due to software limitations. But when it comes to software, it's not all bad. Digital Foundry are huge fans of Crysis and have done several videos about this that I actually learned a lot from. I'd encourage you to watch their videos for more details, but one cool thing that Crysis Remastered has that I could see being utilized in more games, especially running CryEngine, is a new type of software-based ray tracing. Basically, CryEngine creates a simple voxel-based environment to simulate light bouncing in a way similar to the NVIDIA RTX without requiring the fancy tensor cores of these graphics cards, meaning you can have ray tracing technically on the Nintendo Switch and Xbox, which give it a more realistic ambient lighting effect that's all on the software level. Yes, it is more demanding, but it's cool that we're seeing advancements in software that doesn't always require more powerful hardware. So I think Crysis Remastered is a good stepping stone for showing that, hey, ray tracing and really fancy effects are achievable, even on the Nintendo Switch, if enough development goes into it. And finally, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. If you really want to test out how good your computer is, try cranking up the settings in this game. It just will cripple the most powerful workstations. It uses technologies that has never really been seen in a game before, streaming petabytes of map data to create insanely photorealistic environments, using AI to create traffic and weather real time from actual weather in the world. It's crazy what this game is doing. I think a lot of the performance issues are also software optimizations. It's not a very multi-threaded game to run smoothly with lots of processing cores. Hopefully that's something they can fix over time. It's really cool to see a game that really is pushing hardware to its limits again. It makes me excited to see more of the next generation games coming out over the next few years, to really see what companies are doing to utilize the current hardware and create stuff that can also utilize next generation hardware. I don't know, I'm just excited to see where everything goes with the next generation consoles, AMD, Intel, and Nvidia duking it out for superiority. It's always good for consumers to have that competition, especially when they're fighting against these super valuable consoles. It could force computer parts to drop in price, but of course demand is also kind of crazy right now, so I don't know. But yeah, that's just what I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let's start a conversation. I hope you have a great day, a great night, a great life. It's a good time to be a gamer. Stay safe.